The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets waited among those distant lights. They built telescopes. They sent probes. They dreamed of touching the cosmos with their own hands. In the year 2157, that dream became reality. The first colonies spread across the solar system like seeds carried by the wind. Mars turned green under massive domes. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn became mining outposts. Millions of humans now lived among the stars they once only observed from Earth. Admiral Way stood on the bridge of the United Earth ship Prometheus, humanity's largest warship. She was a woman of 53 years, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. The ship floated near Saturn's rings, its metal hull reflecting the golden light of the distant sun. "Status report," she said, her voice calm and steady. "All systems normal, Admiral," replied Lieutenant Park from his station. "The patrol fleet reports no unusual activity." Nodded slowly. Earth had built a small but capable navy, 20 large warships, 50 cruisers, hundreds of smaller vessels. It was nothing compared to what they might face someday, but it was enough to protect human space. Or so they believed. The alarm came without warning. Red lights flashed across every console. The calm atmosphere of the bridge shattered in an instant. "Contact," Park shouted. "Multiple contacts at the edge of the system. They just appeared, I count. Admiral, I count over 300 vessels." His heart froze, but her face showed nothing. 300 ships. Their entire fleet was barely a tenth of that number. "Identify them," she ordered. "Unknown configuration. Unknown energy signatures. Admiral, they are not human." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. First contact. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it came not as a friendly greeting but as an invasion fleet. "Open a channel," said. "All frequencies. Let them know we wish to communicate." The communication officer worked quickly. Seconds passed, then minutes. The alien fleet continued its approach, moving deeper into human space with terrible purpose. "They're not responding, Admiral." "Keep trying." More time passed. The alien ships drew closer. Their designs were strange and frightening. Sharp angles, dark metal that seemed to absorb light. No windows, no obvious weapons, but had commanded warships for 30 years. She knew danger when she saw it. Then the response came. The main screen flickered. An image appeared. The creature on the screen was nothing like any life form humanity had imagined. It stood on 4 legs like a horse, but its upper body rose vertically, ending in a head that resembled a snake. Its skin was purple and scaled. Its eyes were yellow with black slits. When it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical, translated by some unknown technology. "We are the dominion of the eternal stars. We are masters of 5,000 worlds. We have ruled this galaxy for 100,000 years. Your species has been observed and judged. You are found to be primitive, dangerous, unworthy of freedom." Stepped forward. "I am Admiral Way of the United Earth Defense Force. We are a peaceful people. We have no quarrel with your dominion. We ask only to be left alone to develop in peace." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your wishes are not relevant, human. We do not negotiate with lesser species. We do not make treaties with animals. We demand your complete and unconditional surrender. Your worlds will become labor colonies. Your people will serve the Dominion. Your resources will feed our empire. This is not a request. This is your only path to survival." A cold silence fell over the bridge. Felt the eyes of her crew upon her. They were waiting for her response. They were waiting to see what humanity would do when faced with extinction. "And if we refuse?" asked, her voice steady as iron. "Then you will be destroyed. Your cities will burn. Your children will weep for parents who will never return. Your species will be erased from history. You have one standard rotation of your planet to comply. The discussion ends now." The screen went dark. Turned to face her crew, young faces, scared faces, but also determined faces. These were the sons and daughters of Earth. They had grown up on stories of human courage. They had learned about ancestors who stood against impossible odds. They carried the blood of warriors and survivors. "Send a message to Earth," said. "Priority 1, we have made first contact. They are hostile. Tell them to prepare for war." On Earth, the news spread like wildfire through dry grass. Within hours, every human in the solar system knew what had happened. The governments of Earth gathered in emergency session. The United Nations building in Geneva overflowed with ambassadors and generals and scientists. President Maria Santos of the United Earth Council stood before them all. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and brown skin weathered by decades of public service. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not waver. "We have received the Dominion's terms," she said. "Complete surrender, slavery, the end of human freedom forever." She paused, letting the words sink in. "They have given us 1 day to respond." The room erupted. Some called for surrender. Better to live as slaves than die as free people, they argued. Others demanded immediate attack. Some simply wept. Santos raised her hand for silence. "I have spoken with our military leaders. I have consulted with our scientists. I have searched my own heart for the answer, and I have reached a decision." She straightened her spine and looked directly into the cameras that broadcast her words to every human soul. "We will not surrender, not today, not ever. For 200,000 years humanity has faced extinction, ice ages, plagues, wars. Every time they said we could not survive, every time we proved them wrong, we are still here. We will always be here." She took a deep breath. "To the Dominion I say this. You do not know what you have awakened. You see a small species on a small planet. You see primitives barely reaching for the stars. But you do not see our hearts. You do not see our will. You have never faced anything like humanity." Her voice rose with each word. "We will fight you in the darkness between stars. We will fight you on the moons and planets. We will fight you in the corridors of our ships and the streets of our cities. We will never stop fighting. We will never bow. And even if you destroy us, we will make you pay such a price that your empire will remember the name of Earth for 10,000 years." Across the solar system, humans watched. Miners on asteroid stations, families in Mars colonies, soldiers on warships, children in schools. They all heard the same words. They all felt the same fire kindle in their chests. War was coming, and humanity would face it standing tall. The Dominion fleet moved slowly through the outer system. They were in no hurry. They had conquered thousands of species. Some had fought, most had surrendered, all had fallen. These humans would be no different. High Commander watched the tactical display with his 4 yellow eyes. He was old even by Dominion standards, with scales that had faded from purple to gray. He had led conquest fleets for 200 years. He had never failed. "The primitives refused to surrender," reported his subordinate, a younger warrior named. "Expected," replied. "The young species always resist at first. They do not understand the futility of opposing the Dominion. They will learn." "Shall I order the fleet to attack?" Considered, his 300 ships could crush the human defenses in hours. It would be simple, easy, but something bothered him, something in the human leader's words, something in her eyes. "No," he said finally. "Let them gather their forces. Let them prepare their defenses. Let them believe they have a chance. The despair will be when they realize the truth." Shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, with respect, our orders are to conquer quickly and move on. The Empire has schedules to maintain." "The Empire will have its conquest," said sharply, "and I will have my victory in the manner I choose. The humans are different. I sense it. They deserve to face us at their best so that their defeat will be complete." On Earth, the hours ticked away. Factories that had built civilian ships now produced weapons. Scientists who had studied theoretical physics now designed better shields and missiles. Every able-bodied adult volunteered for service. Armies formed overnight. Defense platforms launched by the dozen. Admiral coordinated the fleet from the Prometheus. She studied the enemy formations. She analyzed their ship configurations. She searched for weaknesses. "They're too organized," she said to her tactical officer, Commander James Miller. He was a tall man from New York with dark skin and eyes that missed nothing. "Their formations are perfect, every ship in exact position, every movement synchronized." "That's a weakness?" Miller asked, confused. "Maybe. Perfect discipline means predictable behavior. They follow rules. They expect others to follow rules too," smiled grimly. "Humans are not known for following rules." "What are you thinking, Admiral?" "I'm thinking about history, about how small forces have defeated large ones throughout human history. The Greeks at Thermopylae, the English against the Spanish Armada, Vietnam, Afghanistan. Over and over, the larger force lost because they underestimated their enemy. We're outnumbered 30 to 1. Yes, and they're about to learn what that means against humans." The deadline arrived. Earth fell silent as the moment passed. Then, from deep space, the Dominion fleet began to move. 300 warships advanced in perfect formation. Their destination was clear. Their intent was destruction. Admiral opened a channel to the entire human fleet. Her words reached every ship, every station, every soldier and sailor preparing for battle. "This is Admiral, the enemy is coming. They think they know what they face. They think we are just another primitive species to be conquered. They are wrong." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Today, we fight not just for Earth. We fight for every human who ever looked up at the stars and dreamed. We fight for our children and their children and all the generations yet to come. We fight for the right to choose our own destiny." Her voice hardened. "The Dominion demanded our surrender. We responded with silence. Now we will respond with fire. Let them see what humanity can do. Let them learn why they should have left us alone." The first shots of the war erupted near the orbit of Neptune. A patrol of human destroyers encountered the vanguard of the alien fleet. The fight lasted only minutes. All 5 human ships were destroyed. But they did not die quietly. Before they fell, they damaged 3 enemy vessels. They sent back data about alien weapons and defenses. They proved that the Dominion ships could be hurt. News of the battle reached Earth within hours. 5 ships lost, thousands dead, but also damage inflicted, blood drawn. The aliens were not invincible. In the factories and training camps, the news spread. Workers hammered metal with renewed vigor. Recruits trained harder. The deaths of those first sailors became a rallying cry. They had fought. They had hurt the enemy. Now humanity would avenge them. High Commander received the damage reports with growing unease. 3 of his ships damaged by 5 primitive vessels. The repairs would take days. This was not how conquests usually proceeded. "They are more capable than we anticipated," observed. "Capable, yes, but it changes nothing. We still overwhelm them completely. Their defiance will only make their defeat more thorough." But's voice carried less certainty than before. The fleet continued its advance, past Neptune, past Uranus, through the cold darkness toward the inner system where humanity had built its civilization. On Mars, the largest human colony outside Earth prepared for siege. Governor Thomas Reed ordered all civilians into underground shelters. Military personnel manned defense stations. The red planet bristled with weapons, ready to make the aliens pay for every meter they took. "We can't stop them all," Reed said to his military commanders. "But we can slow them down. Every hour we buy gives Earth more time to prepare." "The people are ready," General replied. She was a stern woman from Egypt with a reputation for never retreating. They know what's at stake. They would rather die free than live as slaves. Then let's make sure some of us live free, Reed said, because that's the best revenge of all. Back on the Prometheus, Admiral finalized her battle plans. They were unconventional. They broke every rule of military engagement. They relied on human strengths that no alien could understand. "This is madness," Miller said when he saw the plans. "We can't possibly." "We can," interrupted. "Because we must. Because there is no alternative. Because humanity has always done impossible things when survival demanded it." She looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness the enemy was coming. 300 ships, advanced technology, thousands of years of military experience. Against them stood humanity, young, outnumbered but not outmatched, never outmatched. "They demanded our surrender," said softly. "We will give them our answer, and they will never forget it." The war for human survival had begun. The Dominion expected a quick conquest. They expected broken spirits and begging for mercy. They expected another easy victory to add to their 1,000-year history of domination. They did not know what was coming. They did not understand the species they had awakened. They did not realize that in all the galaxy, in all the hundreds of thousands of conquered worlds, they had never faced anything like humanity. The fire was coming, and it would burn brighter than any star. The Dominion fleet crossed the asteroid belt on the 14th day of the war. 300 warships moved through the field of tumbling rocks like a dark river flowing through a forest of stone. High Commander stood on his command bridge, watching the tactical displays with growing frustration. They had lost 11 ships. Not to human weapons, not to direct combat. The humans had seeded the asteroid belt with hidden mines, tiny devices almost invisible against the billions of rocks and debris. When Dominion ships passed close, the mines activated, not enough to destroy a warship, but enough to damage engines, enough to rupture hulls, enough to force ships to fall back for repairs. "This is unprecedented," said, his voice carrying confusion. "What species wastes resources on such small attacks? They cannot defeat us this way." Remained silent for a long moment. He had conquered 43 worlds in his career. He had broken the spirit of species far more advanced than these humans, yet something was wrong. Something did not fit the pattern. "They are not trying to defeat us with mines," he finally said. "They are slowing us, bleeding us, making us afraid of every shadow. The Dominion fears nothing." "Then why do our ships now move at half speed? Why do our sensors scan every rock 3 times before we pass? They have planted fear in our fleet, not with strength, with intelligence." The fleet emerged from the asteroid belt and entered the inner solar system. Ahead lay Mars, the first major human colony. Behind them lay a trail of damaged ships and the growing realization that this conquest would not be easy. On Mars, General watched the approaching fleet from her command bunker deep beneath the surface. The walls around her were thick metal and stone. The air was recycled. The lights were powered by fusion reactors that could run for years. "They're entering range of our outer defense platforms," her aide reported. "Let them come closer. I want them fully committed before we strike." Mars had been preparing for this moment for weeks. The red planet was now a fortress. Hundreds of defense platforms orbited in carefully positioned rings. Underground bunkers housed missiles and fighters. The terrain itself had been turned into a weapon. The Dominion fleet approached with casual arrogance. They expected token resistance. They expected to brush aside the primitive defenses and land troops within hours. They did not expect what came next. "Now," said quietly. The sky above Mars erupted with fire. Defense platforms opened up with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space by the thousands. Energy weapons painted lines of light across the darkness. Fighter craft launched from hidden bases on the 2 small moons and dove toward the enemy fleet. The Dominion ships raised shields and returned fire. The exchange was brutal. Platforms died in seconds, their debris creating new obstacles for attacking ships. Missiles exploded against alien hulls. Fighters wove through the chaos, attacking weak points and running before they could be destroyed. Admiral watched the battle from the Prometheus, positioned behind Mars in the shadow of the planet. Her main fleet waited with her, 20 warships, 50 cruisers, the entire might of humanity's space navy. "The defense platforms are falling fast," Miller reported. "Enemy losses are light, maybe 8 ships damaged." As expected, the platforms were never meant to stop them. They were meant to draw them in, to make them confident, to position them where we want them. On the Dominion flagship, watched the battle unfold. The human defenses were collapsing exactly as predicted. Soon Mars would be theirs. Soon the campaign would be half over. "Commander," a sensor officer reported, "I'm detecting power signatures from behind the 4th planet." The human fleet said, "They are coming to defend their colony. Finally, a real battle." He straightened his upper body, his scales flushing slightly with anticipation. "Prepare for fleet engagement. We will crush them and end this war today." The human fleet emerged from behind Mars and charged directly at the Dominion formation. 20 ships against nearly 300. It was suicide. It was madness. It was exactly what expected from primitives too stupid to know when they were beaten. "They are brave," at least said, "foolish but brave." "Concentrate fire on their lead ship, the one called Prometheus. Destroy their commander and the rest will scatter." The Dominion fleet focused its weapons on the approaching human warship. Energy beams converged. Missiles launched by the dozens. The Prometheus should have been vaporized in seconds. It was not there. The image of the human fleet flickered and disappeared. Holographic projections. Decoys. The real human ships were still hidden behind Mars, their engines cold, their systems silent. "What is this?" demanded. "Find them, find the real fleet." Before his sensor officers could respond, the trap was sprung. Humanity had spent the past weeks preparing, not for a direct battle they could never win, but for something the Dominion had never encountered, something born from human history and human cunning. The asteroid belt had not been their only project. For months, human ships had been quietly placing objects throughout the inner solar system, in the rings of Saturn, in the debris fields around Jupiter, in the dust clouds between planets, thousands of packages waiting for this moment. They activated simultaneously. Nuclear weapons, hundreds of them, not aimed at ships, aimed at space itself. The explosions created electromagnetic storms that blinded Dominion sensors. The debris from hidden satellites created clouds of shrapnel that damaged shields. The carefully positioned charges altered the orbits of nearby rocks and debris, sending them crashing into the enemy fleet. It was chaos, pure, beautiful human chaos. The Dominion fleet scattered. Their perfect formation broke apart as ships tried to avoid the sudden storm of destruction. Communications failed. Sensors went blind. For precious minutes, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was helpless. Admiral did not waste those minutes. The real human fleet emerged from hiding, not in front of the enemy, behind them. The human ships had used the planet's gravity to slingshot around Mars at incredible speed, emerging in the perfect position to strike. "All ships fire at will," ordered. "Make them remember this day." Human missiles and energy weapons found their targets. Ships that had survived 1,000 battles fell to weapons they considered primitive. The Dominion fleet was hit from behind while still recovering from the electromagnetic storms. It was the worst military disaster in their recorded history. When the chaos finally cleared, the Dominion had lost 32 warships. Another 57 were damaged. The human losses were 3 cruisers and several fighter squadrons. It was not the victory that would win the war, but it was the victory that proved the war could be won. High Commander stared at the damage reports with disbelief. His fleet had been humiliated. His perfect record was shattered. These primitives, these animals, had outmaneuvered him. How, he whispered, how is this possible? No one on his bridge had an answer. On Earth, the news of the battle spread within hours. People danced in the streets. Strangers embraced. For the first time since the Dominion arrived, there was hope. President Santos addressed the world again. Her voice was strong, but tears streamed down her face. Today, our brave defenders proved that the Dominion can be beaten. Today, the galaxy learned that humanity will not go quietly into the darkness. Today, we showed them what we are made of. She paused to compose herself. But the war is not over. The enemy still outnumbers us. They will come again and they will be angry. We must continue to fight. We must continue to believe. And we must continue to surprise them. On Mars, General walked through the ruins of her defense platforms. The battle had cost many lives. Good people, brave people. Their sacrifice had made the victory possible. "Get me a channel to the Admiral," she said to her aide. His face appeared on the screen moments later. The Admiral looked tired but triumphant. "General, your defense was magnificent." "It was costly," replied, "but worth it. What happens now?" "Now they know we can hurt them. They will be more careful, more cautious. That gives us time." The expression grew serious. "But we need more than time. We need allies." "Allies? The Dominion controls the galaxy. The Dominion has conquered thousands of species, enslaved billions of beings. Do you think they are all happy about it? Do you think none of them dream of freedom? Consider this. You want to start a rebellion. I want to give the galaxy hope. The same hope we found today. If we can prove that the Dominion can be beaten, others might find the courage to fight." In the distant reaches of Dominion space, word of the battle spread through secret channels. Slave workers whispered to each other in the darkness of mines. Conquered species passed messages through hidden networks. For the first time in thousands of years, there was news of a species that had stood against the masters. Humanity had done the impossible. They had made the Dominion bleed. On a forgotten world at the edge of the Empire, a being named Sora heard the news. She was tall and thin, with blue skin and large black eyes. Her species, had been conquered 20,000 years ago. They had served the Dominion ever since, their spirits broken, their resistance crushed. But Sora remembered the old stories, tales of when her people were free, legends of heroes who had fought against the darkness before history began. She had always thought those stories were just myths. Now she wondered. "Is it true?" she asked the worker who had brought the news. "Did the humans really defeat a Dominion fleet?" "Not defeat, damaged, humiliated, but they survived, they fought back." The worker's voice carried wonder. "No one has done that in 100 generations." Sora looked up at the stars through the dirty window of her barracks. Somewhere out there, a species was fighting for freedom, a species that refused to surrender, a species that had done what everyone thought was impossible. "Tell others," she said quietly. "Tell everyone. The galaxy needs to know that hope still exists." Back in the solar system, the Dominion fleet regrouped near Jupiter. High Commander had been forced to accept the unthinkable. He needed to call for reinforcements. "This is humiliating," said as the communication was prepared. "We were sent to conquer a primitive species. Now we must ask for help." "Pride means nothing," replied. His voice was cold now, his arrogance burned away by the fires of battle. "These humans are not what we expected. They think differently than any species we have encountered. They do not fight like civilized beings. They fight like animals, like demons. We will still destroy them." "Yes, we will, but it will cost us more than we imagined." Turned to face his subordinate. "Send the message. Request 50 additional warships. Request specialized ground troops. Request everything we might need to ensure complete victory." The message went out across the vast distances of space. The Dominion Empire learned that their conquest of Earth had encountered unexpected resistance. The rulers in their distant throne world noted the news with interest. No species had resisted successfully in thousands of years. These humans bore watching. On Earth, Admiral planned her next move. The victory at Mars had bought time, but not much. When the reinforcements arrived, the enemy would be even more overwhelming. She needed to use the time wisely. "We need to hit them while they're recovering," she said to her commanders. "Quick strikes, hit and run, make them afraid to sleep, make them see human ships in every shadow." "Our ships can't match theirs in direct combat," Commander Miller pointed out. "Then we won't fight directly, we'll fight our way, the way humans have always fought when outnumbered." Pulled up a star chart. "Here, here, and here. Their supply lines, their communication relays, their sensor stations. We don't need to destroy their fleet. We need to make them paranoid. We need to make them spread thin. We need to make this conquest cost them more than it's worth." The human strategy was clear. They could not win by strength. They would win by will, by cunning, by the simple refusal to accept defeat. Over the following weeks, the humans launched dozens of raids. Small ships would appear from nowhere, attack Dominion positions, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Supply convoys were ambushed. Sensor stations were destroyed. Repair ships were captured and their contents distributed to human forces. The Dominion had never faced anything like it. Their enemies always formed battle lines, always fought in organized formations, always followed predictable rules. Humans followed no rules. They attacked from any direction. They retreated when strong and attacked when it seemed most illogical. They turned every advantage into a trap. High Commander found himself unable to sleep. Every report brought news of another raid, another loss, another humiliation. His fleet sat near Jupiter, afraid to advance without reinforcements, unable to retreat without admitting defeat. "They are everywhere," he muttered one night, alone in his quarters. "And nowhere. How do you fight an enemy you cannot find? How do you break a spirit that refuses to bend?" The reinforcements arrived 60 days after the Battle of Mars. 50 fresh warships joined the invasion fleet. The Dominion force now numbered over 300 combat vessels. Surely this would be enough. Organized his fleet for the final assault. Mars would be bypassed. Earth was the target. Once the home world fell, resistance would crumble. The humans would finally accept their fate. The fleet began its advance toward the blue planet that had caused so much trouble. This time, they moved carefully. Every sensor scanned constantly. Every ship was ready for ambush. They would not be surprised again. Admiral watched them come. The human fleet had grown slightly during the pause. Some new ships, some captured alien vessels converted to human use, but they were still outnumbered 10-1. "This is it," she said to her command staff. "They're coming for Earth. We make our stand here." "Can we win?" someone asked. Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a warrior facing her final battle. "Probably not, but we can make them bleed. We can make them suffer. We can show the galaxy that even at the end humanity stood tall." She straightened her uniform. "And who knows, we've surprised them before. Maybe we'll surprise them again." The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The Dominion came with overwhelming force. Humanity waited with unbreakable will. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen when an unstoppable force met an immovable spirit. The discussion had ended long ago. Now there was only fire. The Battle of Earth began on a Tuesday morning in Geneva. President Santos stood in the war room beneath the old United Nations building, surrounded by screens showing the approaching doom. 312 Dominion warships moved toward the planet like a swarm of metal locusts. "All civilian evacuation complete," her aide reported. "Underground shelters are at capacity. Those who couldn't fit have moved to the deep mountain bunkers." Santos nodded. Billions of people were now hiding beneath the surface of their home world. Children huddled in darkness with their parents. Old people who had never imagined such a day sat in cramped shelters, waiting to learn if they would live or die. "Admiral reports the fleet is in position," another aide said. "Tell her good luck. Tell her humanity is proud of every soul in that fleet." In orbit, Admiral prepared for the fight of her life. The human fleet had positioned itself between Earth and the approaching enemy. 30 warships, 70 cruisers, 400 fighters and bombers. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. It was still pathetically small compared to what they faced. "They're entering weapons range," Miller reported. "Hold fire, let them come closer. Every shot has to count." The Dominion fleet approached in a new formation. Instead of the perfect lines they had used before, they now moved in overlapping groups. Each group covered the others. Sensors swept constantly for traps. They had learned from Mars. They would not be surprised again. High Commander watched the human fleet with grudging respect. "They don't run. Even now, facing certain death, they don't run." "It is impressive," admitted. "Foolish but impressive." "Perhaps not so foolish. They fight for their home, their families, everything they love. Such motivation can make even weak beings dangerous." Raised his upper body to its full height. "But it will not save them. All ships prepare to engage." The battle began with an exchange of long-range fire. Missiles and energy beams crossed the void between the fleets. Dominion shields deflected most of the human attacks. Human ships took damage but held formation. "Return fire all batteries," ordered. "Concentrate on their lead elements." The human weapons were not as powerful as the alien ones, but humanity had learned some things from the captured ships and the previous battles. Their targeting was precise. Their timing was perfect. Several Dominion vessels in the front took multiple hits. One exploded as its reactor failed. "First blood," Miller said grimly. "First of many, keep firing." The fleets closed. The battle became chaos. Ships wove through each other's formations. Fighters darted between giant warships. Explosions lit the darkness like new stars being born. The humans fought with everything they had. Every ship, every sailor, every pilot gave their absolute best. They knew they were outnumbered. They knew they were probably going to die. They fought anyway. Captain Sarah commanded the cruiser Beijing. Her ship had been hit 6 times already. Fires burned on 3 decks. Half her crew was dead or wounded. She kept fighting. "Target that destroyer on our port side," she ordered, her voice hoarse from smoke. "Hit them with everything we have left." The Beijing fired its remaining missiles. The alien destroyer's shields failed. The next salvo tore through its hull. The enemy ship broke apart in a shower of debris. "Got you, you bastards," whispered. Then another energy beam struck her ship. The Beijing died in fire, taking her captain and surviving crew with her. Admiral watched the Beijing's death on her tactical display. Another good ship gone. Another brave crew lost. But they had taken an enemy with them. That was all anyone could ask. The battle raged for 6 hours. The human fleet was pushed back step by step. Ships fell one by one. The defense platforms around Earth added their fire, but it was not enough. Nothing was enough. When the fighting finally paused, the human fleet had been reduced to 11 warships and 23 cruisers. The Dominion had lost 41 vessels. It was an impressive ratio for the defenders. It was still not enough to matter. "They're regrouping," Miller said, "probably preparing for the final push." Looked at the damage reports. The Prometheus was badly hurt. Half her weapons were offline. Her shields were failing. Her crew was exhausted. "This is Admiral to all ships," she broadcast. "You have fought magnificently. History will remember your courage, but the battle is not over. We have one more card to play." Throughout the fight, a small group of ships had remained hidden behind the moon. 12 vessels, not warships. something else entirely, something humans had been building in secret since the war began. "Operation Prometheus is authorized," said. "God forgive us for what we're about to do." The 12 ships emerged from behind the moon and accelerated toward the Dominion fleet. They were not heading for the warships. They were heading for something behind them, the massive vessel that served as the mobile headquarters for the invasion, the ship where High Commander directed the conquest. "Commander," a sensor officer shouted on the Dominion flagship. 12 human vessels approaching at high speed. They're heading directly for us." "Destroy them," ordered. Weapons fire reached out toward the approaching ships. Several were hit. Several exploded, but the rest kept coming. They were not trying to survive. They were not trying to escape. "They're going to ram us," realized with horror. "Impossible. No species wastes lives so." The first ship struck the flagship's shields. The shields held, but the impact shook the entire vessel. Then the ship exploded, not with conventional explosives, with something far worse. Humanity had built nuclear bombs since 1945. They had spent decades making them more powerful. The weapons aboard those 12 ships were the most destructive devices humanity had ever created. Each one carried enough power to destroy a small moon. The first explosion collapsed the flagship's shields. The second tore through its outer hull. The third and fourth reached the reactor core. High Commander had time for one final thought before the light consumed him. He thought about how wrong they had all been, about how this primitive species had proven more dangerous than anything the Dominion had faced in 100,000 years. Then he was gone. The flagship's destruction sent shockwaves through the Dominion fleet. Their commander was dead. Their coordination was broken. Ships that had been advancing now hesitated, waiting for orders that would never come. Admiral seized the moment. "All ships attack, give them everything." The surviving human vessels charged forward. It was suicide, but it was glorious suicide. They tore into the confused enemy formation, targeting damaged ships and command vessels. For a brief, shining moment, the battle turned. But moments end. The Dominion fleet was vast. Even without its commander, even in confusion, it was still overwhelmingly powerful. New commanders took charge. Order was restored. The counterattack came with devastating force. The human fleet was destroyed. Ship after ship fell. Admiral watched her command shattered around her. The Prometheus took a direct hit to its bridge. She was thrown across the room. Blood filled her vision. Darkness crept in from the edges. "It's been an honor," she whispered to no one in particular. Then there was only silence. The battle was over. The human fleet was gone. Earth lay defenseless. But the Dominion had paid a terrible price. 119 ships destroyed. Their high commander killed. Their confidence shattered. What should have been an easy conquest had become the bloodiest single battle in their recorded history. The new commander, a warrior named, looked at the blue planet below. Victory should taste sweet. Instead, it tasted like ash. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Destroy their cities, break their will." "Wait," the voice came from behind him, an older officer, one who had served under for decades. "Commander, I advise caution." "Caution, we have won." "Have we? Look at the casualty reports. Look at what this single planet has cost us. If we destroy them now, we destroy a species that might be useful to the Empire. But if we show them mercy, they might eventually serve us." Considered this. His instinct was to burn the planet to cinders, but the old officer had a point. The Empire always sought useful servants, and these humans were clearly capable warriors. "Very well, we will demand their surrender one more time. If they refuse..." He let the threat hang in the air. The message went down to Earth. President Santos received it in her bunker, surrounded by the ashes of her world's hopes. The fleet was gone. The orbital defenses were gone. Earth was helpless. "They want our surrender," she said to her remaining advisors. They say they will spare us if we submit." The room was silent. What else could they do? The fight was over. They had lost. But Santos remembered something Admiral had said before the battle, about hope, about showing the galaxy that resistance was possible, about the importance of never giving up. "We will not surrender," she said. Her voice was tired but firm. "We will negotiate, we will delay, we will do whatever we have to do to buy time." "Buy time for what?" someone asked. "There's nothing left." "There's always something left. As long as one human draws breath, as long as one heart beats with defiance, there is hope." Santos straightened her spine. "Send a message. Tell them we wish to discuss terms. Tell them anything they want to hear. Just give me time." The Dominion agreed to negotiations, not out of mercy, out of calculation. A living labor force was more valuable than a dead planet, and truth be told, no one wanted to fight these humans anymore. Better to let them surrender peacefully. Days passed, then weeks. The talks went nowhere as Santos intended. Every time the Dominion demanded something, the humans asked for clarification. Every time an agreement seemed close, new objections arose. It was deliberate delay, and both sides knew it. But while the diplomats talked, other things were happening. Across the galaxy, word of the Battle of Earth spread like wildfire. The details were exaggerated. The numbers were inflated, but the core truth remained. A primitive species had taken on the mighty Dominion and fought them to a standstill. They had killed a high commander. They had destroyed over 100 warships. They had shown that the masters could bleed. On 1,000 worlds, slaves began to whisper. On 100 planets, conquered peoples began to remember their own histories of resistance. The fire that humanity had started was spreading. Sara, the blue-skinned who had heard the first news of human resistance, had been busy. She had connections. She knew people. She had spent her whole life secretly preserving the memory of her people's freedom. "It's time," she told her closest allies. "The humans have shown us the way. The Dominion is not invincible. They can be hurt. They can be beaten. What can we do? We have no weapons, no ships. We have numbers, we have knowledge. We have access to their systems, their infrastructure, their supply chains. We are everywhere because they need us to run their empire." Sora's black eyes gleamed with determination. "Start small. Sabotage, delays, accidents. Nothing that can be traced. Nothing that seems deliberate, just enough to make things difficult." The rebellion began quietly. A power plant that failed at a critical moment. A shipment of weapons that went to the wrong destination. A communication relay that developed mysterious glitches. Nothing major, nothing obvious. Just 1,000 small cuts that began to bleed the empire. On Earth, Santos received secret messages through channels she didn't know existed. Beings she had never heard of were reaching out. They called themselves the Free People's Coalition. They had been waiting in the shadows for generations, hopping for a spark that might ignite resistance. Humanity had provided that spark. "We cannot free you yet," the messages said. "But we can help. We can share intelligence. We can coordinate our efforts. We can prepare for the day when open rebellion becomes possible." Santos replied with tears in her eyes. They were not alone. In all the darkness of the galaxy, they were not alone. Months passed. The negotiations continued. The Dominion grew frustrated but did not force the issue. They had other concerns now. Reports of problems throughout the empire. Nothing serious. Nothing they couldn't handle, but annoying, distracting. On Earth, humanity waited. They rebuilt what they could. They trained new soldiers. They prepared for whatever came next. They had lost the battle. They had lost the war. But they had not lost themselves. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, a fleet was being built. Not by humans, by others, by all the species who had watched humanity stand and found their own courage. The Dominion's time was running out. They just didn't know it yet. 2 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. The Dominion occupation had settled into an uneasy stalemate. Their fleet maintained orbit around the planet. Their troops controlled the major cities, but they did not control the people. Humans proved to be impossible occupiers. They smiled and nodded and seemed to obey. Then supply depots mysteriously exploded. Dominion patrols disappeared in the night. Equipment failed at critical moments. It was never open rebellion. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Commander stood in the ruins of what had been a major supply base in North America. The explosion had killed 40 Dominion soldiers. No human bodies were found. "How do they keep doing this?" he demanded of his intelligence officers. "We have sensors everywhere. We have patrols constantly. We have informants in every community." "The humans have a saying, Commander," one officer replied. "They call it guerrilla warfare. They have been practicing it for thousands of years." "Then we must break them, make examples, show them the cost of resistance." They tried. They executed suspected rebels. They burned villages. They implemented curfews and restrictions and punishments. Nothing worked. The resistance only grew stronger. Every act of cruelty created 10 new rebels. Every execution created 100 sympathizers. President Santos led the resistance from a network of hidden bunkers. She moved constantly, never staying in one place more than a few days. The Dominion had tried to capture her dozens of times. They always failed. "Report from the coalition," her aide said one morning. "The rebellion is spreading. 23 worlds have reported significant resistance activity. The Dominion is being forced to divert military resources from all over the Empire." Santos smiled. It was happening. The fire they had started was burning across the galaxy. "What about the fleet?" "Still building. They have contributed significant resources. They have provided technical expertise. Several other species are sending whatever they can spare." The aide paused. "They estimate another year before they're ready." "A year? We need to hold out for one more year." On the Dominion throne world, far across the galaxy, the Eternal Council met in emergency session. These were the rulers of the Empire, ancient beings who had guided the Dominion they were not pleased. "The situation in the Sol system is unacceptable," said Counselor, the eldest among them. 2 years and we still do not have full control. Our resources are being drained. Our reputation is suffering." "The humans are unlike any species we have encountered," replied via holographic connection. "They do not break. They do not submit. They continue to resist no matter the cost." "Then exterminate them. We have done so with troublesome species before." "With respect, Counselor, that would be unwise. The humans have become a symbol. Other species are watching. If we destroy them, we prove that the only way to deal with our rule is to fight. If we break them peacefully, we prove that resistance is futile." The council deliberated for hours. Finally, they reached a decision. "You will have one more year," said. "1 year to pacify the Sol system completely. If you fail, we will send the extinction fleet. The humans will be erased from existence, along with any species that has sympathized with them." Ended the communication with a heavy heart. The extinction fleet, 3,000 warships designed for one purpose, total annihilation. If they were deployed, no one in the Sol system would survive. Back on Earth, Santos received intelligence about the Council's decision. Her network of informants had grown remarkably effective. The Coalition's espionage capabilities far exceeded anything she had imagined. 1 year, she said to her commanders. "We have 1 year before they bring the hammer down. We need to accelerate everything." Commander James Miller had survived the Battle of Earth. He had been pulled from the wreckage of the Prometheus, badly wounded but alive. Now he led the military resistance on the ground. "We have hidden manufacturing facilities across the planet," he reported. "We've been building ships in underground hangars, fighters mostly, but also a few larger vessels. We won't have anything like the fleet we lost, but we won't be defenseless either." "How many ships?" 50 fighters, 10 armed shuttles, 2 cruisers assembled from salvaged parts. Miller shook his head. It's not enough to fight the occupation fleet, let alone an extinction force. It doesn't have to be enough. It just has to buy time. The coalition fleet is our real hope. Across the galaxy, the Free People's Coalition worked feverishly. Sara had become one of its key leaders. Her organizational skills and knowledge of Dominion systems made her invaluable. The fleet is at 60% capacity, she reported to the Council of Free Peoples, a gathering of representatives from 24 species. We have ships from 14 different worlds, weapons from 20, crews from everywhere. Will it be enough? Asked a massive being from a species called the. His people had been among the first conquered by the Dominion 30,000 years ago. They had never forgotten. Honestly, I don't know. The Dominion has overwhelming numbers. Even if we combine every ship we can gather, we'll be outnumbered badly. Sora paused. But the humans taught us something important. Numbers aren't everything. Courage matters, cunning matters. The will to fight matters more than anything. Then we fight, said simply. We fight and we die free, or we fight and we win. Either way, we are no longer slaves. The other representatives nodded. They had all made the same calculation. Better to die on their feet than live on their knees. On Earth, the Resistance stepped up its activities. Not just sabotage now, but direct attacks. A patrol ambushed here. A supply convoy destroyed there. The occupation forces found themselves under constant pressure. Commander responded with increased brutality. Hostages were taken. Collective punishment was implemented. For every Dominion soldier killed, 10 human prisoners would be executed. It didn't work. The humans kept fighting. They are insane, said one night alone in his quarters. They know they cannot win. They know we will eventually crush them, yet they fight on. Why? What drives them? He would never understand. He had been raised in a culture where obedience was absolute and resistance was unthinkable. The concept of fighting for abstract ideas like freedom and dignity made no sense to him. President Santos understood perfectly. She had grown up on stories of human history, of the American Revolution and the French Resistance, of all the times when ordinary people had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. They think we're fighting to win, she said to Miller one evening. We're not. We're fighting because we must, because giving up would mean giving up everything that makes us human. Even if we lose, even if they destroy us all, we will have shown the galaxy what courage looks like. Is that enough? It has to be, because it's all we have. The months passed, the coalition fleet grew, the resistance on Earth intensified, and the deadline approached. 6 months before the extinction fleet was scheduled to arrive, something unexpected happened. A Dominion cruiser appeared in the Sol system, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is commander of the Dominion vessel Harbinger. I wish to defect. The message caused chaos on both sides, demanded to know what was happening. Santos ordered maximum caution, but the transmission continued. I have served the Dominion for 300 years. I have conquered worlds. I have broken species. I always believed it was right. That order required control. That peace required submission. Paused. Then I watched the humans. I saw them fight when there was no hope. I saw them die rather than surrender their spirit. And I realized that everything I believed was wrong. The Harbinger approached Earth slowly, its weapons powered down, its shields lowered. It was completely vulnerable. A single human missile could destroy it. I bring information, continued. Information about the extinction fleet, its composition, its tactics, its weaknesses, and I bring myself. I am a warrior. I will fight alongside you. I will help you defeat the masters who raised me. Because some things are more important than loyalty to an empire. Things like honor, things like freedom, things like hope. Santos took a chance. She allowed the Harbinger to land. She met face to face. He was tall and reptilian, with scales that had once been bright green but had faded to gray with age. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. "You shouldn't," replied honestly. "I have done terrible things. I have destroyed civilizations. I have murdered innocents. Nothing I do now can erase that." His eyes met hers. "But I can choose what I do next, and I choose to stand with you, even if it costs me everything, even if I die remembered as a traitor to my people." "Why?" "Because I watched a human captain ram her ship into our flagship. I saw her face on the sensors in the moment before impact. She was smiling. She knew she was about to die, and she was smiling. In that moment, I understood something I had never understood before." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I understood what it meant to be truly free." Santos studied him for a long moment. Then she extended her hand. "Welcome to the Resistance, Commander." The information provided was invaluable. Details about the extinction fleet's composition, weaknesses in their command structure, blind spots in their sensor networks. It was exactly what the Coalition needed. "We can beat them," Sora said when she reviewed the data. "Not easily, not without cost, but we can beat them." The Coalition accelerated its preparations. Ships that had been months from completion were rushed into service. Crews trained around the clock. Weapons were stockpiled. Strategies were developed and refined. On Earth, the Resistance shifted focus. Instead of attacking occupation forces, they began preparing for the coming battle. Underground hangars were expanded. Hidden bunkers were strengthened. Every human who could hold a weapon was trained to fight. Commander sensed that something had changed. The attacks had slowed. The humans were quieter. It should have been a relief. Instead, it made him nervous. "They're planning something," he told his officers. "I can feel it. They're not giving up. They're gathering strength." For what? They have nothing. They had nothing 2 years ago. They still nearly defeated us. Stared out at the blue planet below. "Never underestimate humans. That was a mistake. I will not repeat it." 3 months before the deadline, the Coalition fleet was ready. 400 warships from 18 different species. The largest unified force the galaxy had seen in 100,000 years. It was still less than half the size of the extinction fleet. "It's time," Sora announced to the Council of Free Peoples. "We move on the Sol system, we relieve Earth, and then we face whatever comes next." "The extinction fleet will follow us," pointed out. "I'm counting on it. If they come to the Sol system, they leave the core worlds undefended. Other species will see their chance. The rebellion will spread faster than they can contain it." "You're betting everything on one battle." Humanity bet everything on standing up to the Dominion. They inspired us to do the same. Now it's time to show them they're not alone. The Coalition fleet began its journey toward Earth. Faster-than-light travel would take 2 months. By the time they arrived, the extinction fleet would be close behind. The final battle was coming. The fate of Earth and the galaxy would be decided. On both sides, warriors prepared for what they knew would be the fight of their lives. The Dominion had ruled for 100,000 years. They had conquered every species that opposed them. They had never faced anything like what was coming. And humanity, battered and occupied but unbroken, waited for their allies. The fire was about to consume everything, and from the ashes something new would rise. The Coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Sol system. 400 warships from 18 species, united by a common cause. At their head flew the flagship Defiance, commanded by Sora of the... She looked at the tactical display and felt a surge of emotion. Earth, the small blue planet that had started everything. The world that had shown the galaxy what resistance looked like. "Send a message," she ordered. "Let them know they're not alone." On Earth, President Santos received the transmission in her bunker. She had known the Coalition was coming. She had not been prepared for how it would feel to see those ships appear on her screens. "They came," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "They actually came." Around her, hardened resistance fighters wept openly. For 2 years they had fought and bled and died. For 2 years they had held on to hope when there seemed to be no reason for hope. Now that hope had arrived. Commander watched the coalition fleet with growing alarm. 400 warships. Where had they come from? How had such a force been assembled without Dominion intelligence knowing? All ships battle stations, he ordered. Form defensive formation around the planet. We must hold until the extinction fleet arrives. The occupation fleet numbered 200 vessels. They were outnumbered, but they had advantages. They controlled the orbital space. They had the planet as hostage. They could threaten to bombard Earth if the coalition attacked. Sora understood the situation perfectly. They'll hide behind the humans, she said to her commanders. They'll threaten to destroy the planet if we attack. Then what do we do? Asked who commanded the contingent. We give them another option. You're up. Commander broadcast on all Dominion frequencies. His voice carried across the fleet, reaching every soldier and sailor under his command. Brothers and sisters of the Dominion, I am commander of the Harbinger. You know my record, you know my history. I was one of you once. I believed what you believe. Then I learned the truth. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Dominion is built on lies. They tell us we bring order to chaos. We bring slavery. They tell us we civilize primitives. We destroy cultures. They tell us resistance is futile. Humanity has proven that is false. Ordered jammers activated but had planned for that. Coalition ships boosted his signal, cutting through the interference. You have a choice now. You can fight for masters who see you as tools, who will sacrifice you without thought, who care nothing for your lives or your honor, or you can join us. Join the species who remember what freedom means. Join the humans who would rather die than kneel. Enough, roared. Prepare to engage the enemy. The first ship that tries to defect will be destroyed. But doubt had been planted. The Dominion soldiers had watched humanity fight for 2 years. They had seen courage they couldn't understand. They had wondered in their private moments what drove these beings to such resistance. Some would fight for the Dominion to the end. Others were not so sure. The standoff continued for hours. Neither fleet moved. Neither wanted to fire the first shot. Both waited for the arrival of the extinction fleet. On Earth, the resistance prepared. Hidden hangars opened. Secret runways cleared. Humanity's remaining ships lifted off, joining the coalition fleet. 50 fighters, 10 shuttles, 2 cruisers built from salvaged parts. It was nothing compared to the forces above, but it was everything humanity had. Commander Miller led the small fleet personally. He had nearly died defending Earth once. He was ready to do so again. Human fleet reporting for duty, he transmitted to the Defiance. Sora smiled. Welcome, Commander. Your timing is excellent. We've been waiting 2 years for this moment. Tell us where you need us. The extinction fleet arrived 3 days later. 3,000 warships emerged from hyperspace, blotting out the stars. It was the largest military force the Dominion had ever deployed. It was designed for one purpose: total annihilation. Admiral commanded the fleet from his massive dreadnought. He was the oldest warrior in Dominion service, with victories stretching back 50,000 years. He had never lost a battle. The rebels have gathered in one place, he observed. How convenient, we can destroy them all at once. Admiral, our forces in the system report the coalition fleet is larger than anticipated, and there are signs of rebellion spreading to other sectors. Irrelevant. Once we destroy this fleet and the rebellion will collapse. All uprisings need symbols. We will erase their symbol today. The combined coalition and human fleet faced the extinction fleet across the void. 450 ships against 3,000. It should have been impossible. But humanity had taught the galaxy that impossible was just a word. Sora addressed all coalition forces. Today we fight not just for Earth. We fight for every species ever conquered by the Dominion. We fight for children not yet born who deserve to grow up free. We fight for the simple right to choose our own destiny." She took a deep breath. The enemy has numbers, they have power. They have 100,000 years of conquest behind them, but we have something they have never faced. We have unity, we have courage, and we have learned from the best teachers in the galaxy. Her voice rose. Humans showed us how to fight when there is no hope. They showed us that the spirit cannot be conquered. They showed us that one small world can shake an empire. Today, we honor their lesson. Today, we show the Dominion what free peoples can do. The battle began. Admiral expected a conventional engagement. The coalition would form lines. They would exchange fire. They would be gradually overwhelmed by superior numbers. Standard tactics against superior forces. The coalition did not use standard tactics. They had learned from humanity. Small ships darted through the Dominion formation, targeting command vessels and communication relays. Larger ships worked in coordinated groups, focusing fire on weak points in the enemy formation. Hidden weapons platforms activated throughout the system, placed there months ago by human resistance fighters. Nuclear mines detonated in patterns that disrupted Dominion sensors. Holographic decoys drew fire away from real ships. Captured Dominion vessels transmitted false orders, creating confusion among the enemy. It was chaos, beautiful, deadly human chaos. Found himself fighting blind. His carefully organized fleet fell into disorder. Ships that should have been supporting each other were scattered and vulnerable. The coalition was everywhere at once, striking and fatting like ghosts. "This is not possible," he said, watching his tactical display fragment into confusion. "No force can fight like this." "The humans can," his aide replied quietly, "and they have taught others." The battle raged for 12 hours. The extinction fleet's numbers began to tell. Coalition ships fell one by one. The defenders were pushed back toward Earth. It seemed like the end was coming. Then something unprecedented happened. Ships within the Dominion fleet began turning on each other. Commander's message had done its work. Officers who had listened, who had wondered, who had felt the first stirrings of doubt, made their choice. 30 Dominion vessels defected to the coalition, then 50, then more. Traitors screamed, "Destroy them all." But the defections threw his fleet into even greater chaos. Former allies now fired on each other. Command structures collapsed. The perfectly organized war machine tore itself apart. Admiral found his flagship surrounded. Coalition ships on every side, defecting Dominion vessels blocking his escape. His shields were failing. His weapons were depleted. He had lost. "Surrender," Sora transmitted. "Your fleet is broken. Your cause is lost. Further fighting will only cost more lives." Considered his options. He could fight to the death. He could take as many enemies with him as possible. It was the Dominion way. But as he looked at the tactical display, as he watched his empire crumble around him, he finally understood. The Dominion had always won because they faced enemies who fought alone. Enemies who could be conquered one at a time. These enemies had united. They had inspired each other. They had become something greater than the sum of their parts. "I surrender," said. The words felt strange in his mouth. He had never spoken them before in 50,000 years. The battle was over. The extinction fleet was shattered. Over 1,000 ships destroyed. Hundreds more captured or defected. The greatest military force the Dominion had ever assembled, defeated by slaves and primitives and one small blue world that refused to kneel. On Earth, people emerged from their shelters. They looked up at the sky and saw the flashes of the distant battle. They had no way to know what was happening, but they hoped, they prayed, they believed. When the news came, when they learned that the coalition had won, the celebration was beyond anything in human history. Strangers embraced in the streets. Enemies forgave each other. Families reunited after years of separation. President Santos stood before the cameras, broadcasting to a world and a galaxy. Today, freedom won. Today, the species of the galaxy prove that courage is stronger than fear, that unity is stronger than tyranny, that the light of hope can never be fully extinguished, no matter how dark the night. She paused, composing herself. But this is not just our victory. It belongs to every being who ever dreamed of freedom. It belongs to our allies who crossed the galaxy to stand with us. It belongs to the brave souls of every species who gave their lives for this moment. Her voice strengthened. The war is not over. The Dominion still controls vast territories. Billions still live in chains. But today proved that their power can be broken. Today proved that the future belongs to those who fight for it. She smiled through her tears. To the galaxy we say this: you are not alone, you never were, and together there is nothing we cannot accomplish. The coalition maintained its position in the Sol system as word of the victory spread across the galaxy. Rebellion erupted on 100 worlds. Species that had been conquered rose up against their masters. The Dominion Council tried to respond. They sent fleets to suppress the uprisings, but for every rebellion they crushed, 2 more began. The Empire was bleeding from 1,000 wounds. Sora addressed the Council of Free Peoples. We have won the first great battle, but the war will continue for years, perhaps decades. The Dominion will not fall easily. Then what do? Asked a representative from a newly freed world. We do what the humans taught us. We fight. We endure. We never give up. Sora looked around the room. And we remember why we fight. Not for revenge, not for conquest, but for the right of every being to live free. Commander Miller was promoted to Admiral, leading Earth's rebuilt fleet. He stood on the bridge of a new warship, one built by human and alien hands working together. He thought about Admiral, who had given her life defending Earth, about all the brave souls who had fallen. We'll finish what you started, he whispered to the stars. I promise. Years passed. The war continued. The Dominion retreated world by world, system by system. The coalition grew stronger with each victory. New species joined. Former Dominion soldiers changed sides. Finally, 20 years after humanity's first contact with the Dominion, the war ended. The Dominion Council surrendered unconditionally. The empire that had ruled for 100,000 years was no more. In its place, a new galactic community emerged. The Free People's Alliance, founded on principles that humans had lived by for centuries: democracy, freedom, the rights of all beings to determine their own destiny. President Santos, now elderly but still sharp, attended the signing ceremony on the former Dominion throne world. She stood beside Sora, beside representatives of hundreds of species. 100,000 years of tyranny ends today, the representative of the new alliance declared. A new era begins, an era of cooperation, of freedom, of hope. Santos smiled. She thought about that day so long ago when the Dominion first arrived, when they demanded surrender, when they expected humanity to bow. They didn't know what they were starting, she said quietly to Sora. No, they thought they were conquering another primitive species. Instead, they awakened something that will change the galaxy forever. On Earth, a monument stood in Geneva, where the United Nations building had once stood. It honored all those who had fought in the war: Admiral, Captain, the crews of the ships that had rammed the original flagship, the resistance fighters who had died in shadows, the ordinary humans who had simply refused to give up. The inscription read, "They demanded surrender." The discussion ended. Humanity responded with fire, and from that fire freedom was born. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it. Beings of every shape and color stood before the monument and wondered at the species that had started everything. The small, fragile creatures who had faced extinction and refused to accept it. They came to understand something important. Humanity was not special because of their strength or their technology. They were special because of their spirit, their absolute refusal to surrender, no matter the odds, their ability to inspire others to find that same courage within themselves. The galaxy had been changed forever by a species that had barely left their home system when the war began. Changed by people who looked up at the stars and saw not threats but possibilities. Changed by a simple truth that humans had always known, that freedom is worth any price. The Dominion had demanded surrender. They had expected obedience. They had assumed that humanity would be like every other species they had conquered. They had been wrong. Humanity had responded with fire. And in the end, that fire had burned away the chains of an empire and lit the way to a better future for all. The stars no longer seemed so cold and distant. They were home now, home to humans and to all the species who had found their freedom beside them, home to hope. And somewhere in the eternal night between galaxies, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the echo of humanity's answer to the Dominion's demand. No, never, not now, not ever. The fire burned on.